Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. It's a very really a pleasure today being here for this webinar, which is kind of different from the webinars that we have had so far. Usually, many of you may have participated to our previous webinars that were concentrated on our content, so focused on the type of content that we deliver, trends, insights. Today is a bit different because we will have insights, but of a different kind, because we have a very beloved guest here from Barilla, Alessandra Cervi, which will give us some indication of the ways in which Barilla is using Nextatlas trends in its everyday work. So I'm Eric Giordano, Head of Business Development from Nextatlas, and very welcome to you, Alessandra.
Thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. My name is Alessandra. Call me Alex if you like, it's shorter. Digital Insights and Marketing Performance's Global Lead. Thankfully, you wrote that because that name is so long. And it's sometimes difficult for me to remember it. Because internally, I'm known as the Observatory Lead. And I know that we're going to talk about it in a moment. I've joined Barilla 3 years ago, and I've been in London since more than 11 years now. And yeah, before that, I was coming from agency experiences in research and insight. And within Barilla, as my title says, still work in consumer research, but dedicated into digital and performances of marketing activities. And thank you so much for having me here today.
It's really a pleasure. And yeah, so today we already anticipated a bit what we will see. First of all, we will have a look at Nextatlas technology for the many participants that maybe haven't seen before our platform. Then we will understand together with Alex what is the Barilla Observatory, what are its, let's say, its objectives and how it works. And finally, we will, let's say, create a connection by looking at between the first 2 points by looking at a couple of examples of application of Nextatlas trends by the Barilla Observatory. So first of all, let's have introduce quickly Nextatlas. It's nearly 10 years that Nextatlas is on the market. Many things have changed throughout these years, but there are a few principles that remain the same. So we are a combination of data scientists and insight strategists. And this is important because we have been born with the objective of identifying trends in a way that is supported by data, and in the last couple of years also by artificial intelligence, of course, that is really moving fast and presenting a lot of opportunities. The combination of this qualitative approach makes ourselves define as a foresight scientist. And another principle which is very important and basic for us is the fact that we leverage the power of early adopters. We listen to information that are coming from the web, but only from this type of people that are anticipating behaviors, needs, discussions about the topics and the lifestyles that will be relevant for the majority in the next months and years. We're speaking about some 300,000 profiles at global levels that are always updated. So every quarter there's a refresh of these profiles. And yeah, what we do is balancing sources. Social networks are changing, are always updating, and there's always something new and something that may be the case. So it's always important to keep track of the updates and always balance in the right way the sources that we use. We discover weak signals before they go mainstream, as I was saying. So it's important to jump on trends before everybody knows them. It's the power of anticipation that is very important for companies such as Barilla, but not only to, let's say, to have this type of information that can be used to build also mid and long-term strategies. And of course, there are also phenomena that we know very well that are already in a more mature stage that we want to measure for time to understand how they evolve. So it's always a matter of understanding what is changing and how they are also evolving from a geographical perspective. Our services are divided, let's say, into different type of services and deliverables. Today, we will focus on the self-service solution, so the platform, which is as a time frame is more to understand small, let's say, middle, short and midterm content. So understanding what will be going on in the next months, maybe in the next couple of years. So this type of strategies that can be built based on the platform. Of course, for the long-term strategies, we have also foresight services that are available as advisory. But speaking about the platform, let's have a look. Maybe some of you have never seen it. Of course, Alex, you are very familiar with Nextatlas. Maybe some of you have seen a previous version. This is the version that we've been developing in the last 3 years. And every day there is something new that is published, and it can be an information in term as a fact, so a statistic that is highlighted, or an insight, such as the one that we are seeing. For example, this one is about the growing popularity of one-pot cooking, and this has been published today, and is based on the observation of a curve that is evolving in a certain way. For example, in this case, we see this plus 25% forecast in the next 12 months. And this is based, of course, on the observation of the mentions of this concept in the last 3 years. Of course, the industry is mainly food and beverage, as we would expect in this case. And every time that there is a very specific industry that is highlighted for an insight, we also have particular indications, such as these ones related to ingredients, cooking methods, and so on. Of course, there are many concepts, and we highlight the ones that are growing, and the relation to other phenomena that can be relevant, also to understand what is the framework around what we are seeing. Another way to understand the framework is looking at business cases that we call ideas and innovations. So business cases that are always updated and that can be located anywhere in the world. As you can see, we have a global coverage. For example, this insight is, let's say, relevant for 3 different continents, 3 different areas in the world. Target audiences are one of our passions, of course, in the analysis and also in the research. We can see them from a perspective from interests and values, but also, of course, from the most basic demographics and gender expression, for example. So there are many data that are proposed for each one of the phenomena that we detect with this ongoing monitoring of 300,000 profiles. And of course, you can always have examples of content that you can click, that you can deep dive to understand more what's going on with a phenomena. Another thing that you can do, of course, is looking at the related phenomena, so to understand what is the framework around what is relevant to you. And the phenomena can be as specific as the one that we were seeing, or maybe they can also be bigger, such as, for example, the trends that are phenomena that are kind of combination of insights and facts. So macro phenomena that are created based on the observation of many different small phenomena that go in the same direction. Trend status is a very important metric that we have for trends. For example, in this case, we have a relevant and reliable trend. This is based on the timeline that we observe. It's always updated, so even a trend that, such as in this case, was discovered more than 1 year ago, is always updated in its statistics, is described by the insight team, and yeah, of course, as we were saying, it's a combination of different components. In this case, we have many insights that are composing this trend. So this is just, let's say, a little example of the phenomena that can be found on Nextatlas. We are not going to show all the platform, but just to let you know what is the type of understanding that a company as Barilla has access. Lately, in the last couple of years, we have also exploited all the possibilities offered by AI, generative AI. In this case, we are asking to generate our internal system based on GPT-4 to tell us something about the emerging trends in local cuisines and how are they shaping the food industry. This is a tool, an internal tool that is available to everybody, all the one that have access to the platform, that makes a search into Nextatlas to, let's say, let emerge the phenomena that are related to the question that we have asked. And as you can see, let's say, is building a text with all its references that are internal references of Nextatlas. And it's and by the way, this is the newest version that is that will be published, released in a couple of weeks. So it's very fresh, and it's always an update and a new way to extract value from this ongoing observation of phenomena at the global level. Also, in this case, if you want to see more, you can click on the references, and you have access to more information about the text and the answer that is provided by Generate. So this is just to give you a very, very quick overview of Nextatlas as a platform, and together with Generate. So this is the tool that Alex, you know very well, because you've been using it now for, I believe, 3 years nearly. And yeah, it's what we want to understand now is how the observatory works, and how this type of technology and information enters into the observatory.
Perfect. Let me steal your screen so I can share a couple of slides that I put together just to help me in sharing the story. So before we go into the detail of what is the observatory, I would like you to think about something that you're probably very familiar with, which is, what do you do when you're online? Of course, listening to me today and to Eric as well. But when we are online, what we tend to do are things like shopping, or perhaps you engage with your friends, or your favorite influencers online. You put that cheeky like on that post, for example. Or perhaps you might be searching for a new recipe or information about something, or even taking a picture of your favorite food, or what you eaten yesterday night, for example. And generally, if you don't do all of these things online, even if you're going to supermarkets and you do any type of purchase, any type of scan, or you scan the item and you pay for that item, all of these actions, they produce an input, a data point. And all of this data point can be used, and can be used to inform what people are thinking, what are they doing, what's the process and the decision journey. Of course, the legal limits. I'm not talking about anything illegal, but not following GDPR regulations, of course. But we can take all of this information to help us understand our consumer better. And if you think about how many people are connected online in the world as of today, we're talking about 5 billion people, which is an exorbitant amount of information that they can produce. In fact, one of the latest figures is that 4.4 billion online interactions are happening every minute. Imagining taking all of this information to help you understand your consumers. It's huge. It's a lot. You can really understand what's the decision journey, what are the different purchase barriers, what are the different, potential inspiration that they can take some new recipes, or perhaps I'm talking about recipes, but even inspiration on what they could buy next, or which brand they could move towards. So really, there's a huge potential here. When I joined Barilla a few years back, we had this research hub, which was called the listening room. And it was such an incredible thing to have for a company, because it allowed us to listen to consumers by looking at what people were saying online. Now, 3 years ago, that was already very well embedded into the business, and it was working extremely well. But what we needed was also all this type of information, and start injecting this into the mix, so that we could understand the journey of our audiences, and not looking at just simply, and I'm saying simply, in speech marks, because, is it really simple? But not only by listening to what people are saying, but also looking at what people are searching for, and perhaps looking at what they're going in terms of the different websites that are out there. So taking into account that we needed to just going beyond the social listening and start encompassing all of the different data points, we started to think about not just a listening room, we are now observing the world. And this is how the observatory was born. The observatory, in a few words, is a data-powered insights hub that utilizes digital data to take all of this information and transform it into an insight that the business can use, that they can use to grow in business strategic decisions, or maybe something a bit more tactical. But any type of information that we can take out there, I mean, there's 4.4 billion interactions every minute. I mean, you can't take them all, or perhaps you can, but what is relevant? The observatory is here to support on that, selecting the data that is relevant for us and finding the insights, not in the super vertical methodology of social listening or perhaps even a search analysis, but by looking at the insights that comes from the combination of all this data point. So perhaps if people are, and I'm going to give you like a very big example, perhaps, let's say that people are taking pictures of their amazing spaghetti with tomato sauce, and they're posting it online and they're bragging about it to their friends because it was delicious. But then in reality, what they do is that they're actually looking for how can they make a bechamel sauce for their lasagna, because this is what they don't know. And they're never going to admit it to their friends, but they're looking for that information. Now, this is a super simplistic example of what it could be looking like. But this is what we do. We're looking not just at the evidences that one methodology can bring us, but we're looking at the different connections that we can uncover by the different type of data that we gather from different sources. And this is what, in a nutshell, in a few words, what is the observatory? How do we give this information back to the business to be a piece of insight, just simply the insight, or perhaps we provide reports or more of a presentation-like. Sometimes we also provide some dashboards, but the important point for us is to provide something that is useful for the business. Now, imagine that a lot of this information needs to be elaborated and needs to be, really dig into. So there's a lot of data points. And this is where, for us, artificial intelligence is super important, because it allows us to accelerate in many of these processes. But the most important thing for us is, of course, using artificial intelligence, but alongside humans, because this is where you can have that advantage. You can have that contextualization of the information and understanding what are the nuances that really helps you understand that insight, so that group of data sets and data points. For example, having a human analysis can help you contextualizing all of the societal and cultural nuances that only a human that is breathing, living, speaking the language, and living in a specific country can pick up on, because it can pick up on nuances or hints coming from your society where they're living in, or a group of people, of communities that they are interacting with. So this is something that can really help us not only accelerating and finding the information, which is what we use for artificial intelligence, but uncovering and really contextualizing that information for one specific market. So if you think about it, for example, I'm Italian, as you have seen from my name. I've been growing up in Italy. I've been there for more than 20 years. And then I moved to the UK. Before that, I was a little bit in Australia, but after that, I went to the UK. And I've lived in the UK for a long time. My culture, and I identify my culture as Italian. However, I've been away from Italy for long enough. So sometimes I'm missing some context, or I'm missing some cues that somebody else who might be, for example, from another culture, but who's currently living in Italy, can really pick up on, because they're watching the TV there, they're reading the news there. I can still read the news and I can potentially understand some nuances because that is my cultural background, but I don't have the immediacy of what is going on, what are people saying, how people are reacting to certain news that perhaps comes from, I don't know, politicians, or it could be coming from a TV show, or it could come from a very particular event that is happening in the country. This is why the human analysis for us is important, and also that human needs to be physically, or at least culturally, coming from the markets in which we're operating in. So we are able to understand what does it mean when we put in front of different data sets and different observations, and contextualizing that observation for something that's a bit more meaningful cultural for a culture in that market. Now, the observatory and the global observatory sits in one of the three hubs and headquarters of Barilla. As you might have noticed in the past year, we have moved and created new headquarters. We now have 3 centers. Of course, Parma is the head and continues to be the head and the heart of our business. We also have a Center of International Development in Amsterdam and a Tech Center of Excellence in London. This one was established 3 years ago when I joined. Different name at that time, but still the same soul. And this is where we started creating the observatory, but we soon and immediately recognized that we needed to also have a little bit more of information coming from the local markets. So we also have an observatory in Parma that serves the Italian teams and supports the Italian teams for everything that is more Italian related. And we also have an observatory in the US that is more dedicated to the US team and the Americas. So this is to give you an example of how we are not just saying that we need human analysis, but we're actually creating that space for local audiences and local teams to have their own observatories that can support them in gathering all of this information and giving back in the right insights. But of course, we do not operate alone. We have relying on a really good network within the business, starting from our advanced analytics team that is actually still part of our group and of the same team of the observatory, as in like I'm part of their team more than anything. Of course, the media and e-commerce and martech. So we do not work in silos and separated from the rest of the business, but we're well integrated because we need to have all of this information at our end. And of course, not just that, but we rely on partners and tools that can help us speeding up the process and identifying the right insights, especially when we have to deal with a large set of data. But who do we talk to? I said teams, but the reality is that our main internal clients are the marketing teams. They are the everyday which we relate to. We support them in terms of both taking business decisions, strategic decision, or as I said before, sometimes a bit more tactical decision. But at the same time, we collaborate with our RDQ teams, perhaps not as often, but we definitely bring the voice of consumers, and we support and bring in that voice of consumers coming again from the digital sphere. So these two are our main clients internally, and usually when we talk to the teams, I usually refer to these 2 groups. But how do we support them? So in a nutshell, what we support with is providing reporting, so an analysis of everything that is going on a regular basis, but we also provide some research. So perhaps the business has some very specific question in their head, and they would like to have some support or some extra analysis to answer that question. And this is where we work in supporting and giving that answer, or even sometimes shaping that question. At the same time as the observatory, we do work for campaign performances. So we do analyze the performances of our marketing activities. And we also have some more specific projects that helps us accelerate in certain areas when it comes to using all of these methodologies for digital. and trying to understand how we can get this information and how we can use this information to provide an insight that is useful for the business. Now, I'm saying that, we do a lot of things, but then we have so much time during the day to then report back to the business. So what we've created is an online repository and an online space where we save, and you can see a short video here of a demo of what it looks like. And it's a space where we share all of this information and all of our analysis to be able to then, for the businesses, go into it and select what they need or read what they need based on the different questions that they have, the different projects they're working. And many of this information is actually we're taking, especially what you're seeing here from Nextatlas. And we're taking inspiration a lot from Nextatlas. We integrate with other tools and other information, but there's a really strong base from which we start with. I think I talked a lot. I'm sorry, I'm also a bit sick, so my voice is, I'm losing a little bit my voice. So before we go ahead, I would like to ask whether you have some questions, Eric, or before we go into a bit more examples of how we use Nextatlas.
Yeah, actually, I have a couple of comments and questions because I believe the most interesting part of the story that so there are many interesting points, but one that was really curious to me is the fact that you have evolved from listening to observing. So also in the term and the definition that you are using is less passive and less focused on today, and is more it's broader, and it's also looking also more at the future, and it's a very interesting approach. And I believe from what I've seen and also what I had to know in the last months, also when we met and you showed me a bit how it works, that the main interesting part is also the fact that you are partly curating all these inputs that you are receiving from different angles. First of all, to give something to your internal colleagues, let's say internal clients, they could be defined, that is already validated by your experience, but then also letting them to, let's say, make this information more actionable also at local level. So it's a really interesting process. Yeah, in this about this, I have also a curiosity. Are you looking only at food-related insights, or also at other industries, or let's say phenomena that could come from anywhere?
No, we look beyond food industry. And I think that's a really good question because we can go super vertical and we can go into the details of is this ingredient or is this recipe, or as we've seen before in the example, it's the one pot cooking. But consumers don't think by industry. We are not, oh, this is food, so I'm gonna only follow trends that are about food. We are actually much more influenced by other areas of our life and other what the businesses would call industries. So for me, it's important to also have a look at what could be considered adjacent or what could be considered an industry that could influence the food one. For example, of course, we talking about architecture. It's not just about how we, what is the next ingredient, but also about where do we consume that product or how we prepare that product. Today we've got air fryers. Everybody's got an air fryer. How that is going to impact the way we think about our own product or the way people are preparing that product that we are serving to our consumers. Or even more in regionally, with an interesting insight that came out was not everybody has pots and pans. Sometimes there are some cultures that have more pots and some cultures that have more pans, or some other cultures that have none of them. They just use something completely different. And these are our considerations that we need to take into account. So, for example, for trends, we also look into architecture, we look into agriculture, of course, that's a really important part, of course. But we sometimes look into fashion and design because there's also the fun part of it. And, when it comes also to partnerships, you have to consider that. You have to consider what are other trends that might influence the food industry in some ways. Or it could be something that today is manifesting in design, tomorrow might be manifesting in food. because we don't have to be super vertical into it's that ingredient, is the chicory, is the, I don't know, is the cardamom. It could be the trends could come from broader areas, and looking into the macro areas and how does that manifest. It could be at different times throughout a certain period of time. So we can perhaps find something that is about to come or is a very early stages in a different industry, and we should keep an eye on it because that could be something that will come into the food somehow, and it will manifest differently for food, of course, because it's food, but it's part of the same macro trends.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. Also, because also in our experience, since the beginning, we have tried to also to understand how trends that by definition are something that is moving through space and time are also shifting from, for example, from an industry to another one or to a geography to another one. So maybe there are countries also that are anticipating in comparison to other countries that are following, depending on the market. And yeah, I think also you have already mentioned some example, but also in terms of, for example, of concepts that are shifting from beauty and food, and so in beauty nowadays we speak about ingredients exactly as in food, and so also the concept and the needs and selling propositions that are there are really shifting from an industry to another. So yeah, it's absolutely worth looking also outside of its own space. And yeah, so based on that, how would you define a valuable insight? So what is a valuable insight for you?
So I think the easiest answer would be it's something that is actionable, something that you can take and give back to the business, and the business can do something about it. It's not just, oh, it's a nice to know. I think that would be the most obvious answer. But at the same time, I think something valuable is a valuable insight is when you think about the when you present that insight back to your audiences, and the reaction that you get is very much on the line of, wow, it makes sense. I kind of like almost like I always knew, but nobody really pointed it out. That to me is another definition of a valuable insight, because nowadays we do a lot of insights as businesses, and there are some that could be almost like, everybody knows about this insight. The classics, the basics, but a valuable one is something that is very related to you, and it's something that is actionable for your business and for what you do. Because otherwise it could be a super interesting insight. It could be something that really inspires you, but if it's not relatable for what you do and your business and your audiences that you're talking to, it could stay in a nice British life and die there. You
Yeah,
need something relatably for the audiences, and you need to make it relatable sometimes and make sure that it lands. But valuable insight has also needs to be actionable.
yeah, yeah. And okay, so speaking about actionable insights, can you show us a couple of examples of how you use these trends and insights that are coming from Nextatlas in your everyday work?
Absolutely. So I think one of the most immediate when we were discussing this example is how we use the Nextatlas to create recipe content for our online and digital channels. And we've got, some examples here. You can see one from Barilla, one from one of our other brands, which is Vaza. And we're using a lot Nextatlas to take some of the inspirations. And two of these are the outcomes of it. But how does it work usually is that the observatory, as you mentioned before, we take the information from Nextatlas, but we also embed with other sources of information to be able to then create a picture that is holistic enough, and it's also elaborated. Oh my God, elaborated. Sorry. For our audiences and for the businesses we talk to. So we provide something that is a short analysis, doesn't have to be 50 slides. It can be a short analysis with what does it mean for the brand? What does it mean for our business? Is it something that we could tap into? Then, of course, we give some recommendations, but I'm not a chef. I enjoy cooking, but I'm definitely not a trained chef. we need, I'm definitely not a creative person, so we need to also have a managerial expertise and also chef expertise to be able to select the ones that we are providing as strong recommendations, as these are the ones that also have supported data at the back of it. So we usually give all of this information into that one-stop shop observatory that I've shown before. And then the team selects the ones that feels like this is something that is relevant for us because we've got a campaign coming up and these are going to be the topics that we're going to touch upon. Or seasonality wise, it also fits. Or perhaps there's, oh, I have got a shooting booked in and this could be a really good time for us to create that content. So I leave it to the content team really to create the best content out of it, and then they go into production. If there's sometimes a creator that supports also in creating the recipe and the content, the video. Of course, we go into an optimization phase and then a publishing phase, and then all of these insights and all of these results, sorry, goes into building the next insight. And this is why I'm saying other information, because, for example, if we know that, I don't know, nuts are performing very well, then I'll know that next time on Nextatlas, I will immediately recognize that all of the insights that fits into our learning are probably much more likely to get picked up and much more likely to resonate with my audiences. So I would also look into this to then rebuild, okay, what is the next thing that we can offer as a suggestion or as an inspiration for our audiences. And for example, I'll bring you another example that we've got with one of our best performing content for Vaza. Apologies, I'll see if it plays. This was coming from really interesting points from that we found in Nextatlas around the concept of snacking and having little treats throughout the day. And also at the same time, we were noticing that things like peanut butter, almond butter, and all of this, why I was using nuts as an example before, was something that was coming up a lot in among the trends. So what we did was creating this short analysis that you can see in the middle. So this was a very short, because unfortunately the screenshot is a bit longer, but it's a short analysis of how can you appeal in a new moment of consumption for a product that usually is consumed during breakfast in certain markets. So this is where we offered this potential solution. You can use this type of product. You can use the positioning in this moment of occasion, and this is what the business has. Well, the business, I'm saying the business, but this is the amazing people in the team have we managed to create and publish. So definitely like immediate is like content inspiration that for us is super helpful to use. But then at the same time, another way we use it is by validating some ideas or validating perhaps an audience. So sometimes we got a brilliant idea that we would like to, execute in a campaign or perhaps execute more into a new strategy for the year. And ideas come sparks from everywhere, but then we need to have the data to support that idea. So this is the role of the observatory, is also to support them in either validating or disprove. Because we need to be like looking at, being impartial at most. So Nextatlas is also helping us here in understanding not just super vertically, as I've shown you earlier in the, this is the recipe, this is an area that we can build on, but also in different areas and in more of a behavioral trends and shifting towards a different mindset, a different perception of ourselves and how we live within the world that can help us understand whether that audience that we want to go for is going to work with these ideas that we have in our head, or whether we need to shape our next idea to more fit into this modern trends that we are seeing. So, for example, in this case, we have looked at, Marie Kondo, the recent campaign that we've got out. We also had a look at, okay, what's her popularity right now, when it fits in what we're seeing in terms of trends. And this doesn't mean that it's a yes or no decision, but it definitely helps in building the next steps and what we're going to do next, and whether there is other consideration that we need to take into account. yeah, so the two examples of something quite tangible that we've produced recently in using Nextatlas. But generally, what I would say is that Nextatlas helps us a lot in three areas. Definitely understanding our audiences and not only what is trending, but also what appeals to them. Understanding a little bit better our decision journeys. So where the decision happens and what is influenced and what are they influenced by. And of course, a trend and foresight, which is probably the biggest pillar in here.
Yeah,
So yeah.
thank you very much. Yeah, I know that unfortunately you can't share other type of examples that maybe, for example, have to do with a product because, of course, in this case, we are going towards more delicate in internal information. But it's at least we have seen some principles. I mean, so the principle of discovery, the principle of validation, the principle of audience understanding that are all, of course, very valuable and that can be extended also outside, of course, the food business. So thank you very much for having shared this with us. We still have a couple of minutes, so I invite everybody to write their own questions. I see that there are already a few ones, and also I invite all the ones that are interested to request a free platform demo. Everyone that wants to use it and try it and see it together with us. But let's go to the Q&A. We have a first question that is coming from Evelyn. How do you cope with the decrease of contents and user that X Twitter is experiencing? Okay, so this is from somebody that, of course, is well aware of the phenomena that are occurring in social media space. So we know that there have been a lot of changes in the last couple of years for regarding Twitter, and we have to say that for Nextatlas, it has become a bit less relevant source than it was before. This is a bit in our nature, so we're always, let's say, balancing different type of social networks and not only as a source. In this moment, for example, YouTube is gaining more relevance for us. It's interesting because you see fresher content, you see more users that are still entering into that space, and in many cases they are we find a lot of early adopters. We see some TikTok trends that are reproduced in YouTube, so it's also a good way to have a broader view of phenomena that also are maybe born elsewhere. So yeah, it's let's say it's we are not so scared when it happens that a certain social network is changing its nature, because it's something that happens always, and it will always happen. This is the reason why we're always including new sources. Another question. So this one is more for Alex. From Mark, what is the most unexpected phenomenon you discovered through Nextatlas? Just a curiosity.
I think something that we were discussing the other day when I saw this point about Gen Z and breakfast moments, rediscovering the breakfast moment. I thought it was quite surprising, but maybe with me being highly biased recently as I was reading a lot around snacking occasions and the snacking becoming a new moment for replacing meal moments. So seeing Gen Z really rediscovering the the breakfast moment and looking into it as an important moment of the day. I know as as millennials, we've grown up with this concept. So seeing that how we shifted towards snacks and now like, oh, let's go back to breakfast. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. How much have I actually been biased in being like surprised by this? Is it really a natural, evolution of the of the trend? And this is where sometimes I need to sit and think about it and say, okay, have I been biased so far? Is there anything that I can eliminate my bias from? And then looking into more data about it. And this is why sometimes I find Nextatlas really surprising and helpful in this method, so that I don't sit in a bias of what I expect the next trend to be.
Yeah, of course. So there is still time for a final question from Melissa. How much time typically passes from when you discover an insight to when your brands take action? In other words, how far in advance do you need to spot an insight to make it actionable?
It depends on, I hate giving this answer, it depends, but unfortunately, it does depend on what was the original question. So if the team that you're working with needs an answer to, for example, a campaign activity, that trend can be looking into the next year because your campaign activity will be executed within the next year. But of course, if you're looking into more further along the line, you're looking into your next 10 years, then you need to be able to identify where that trend sits in that moment of time. So whether it is, okay, look, in 10 years' time, we're gonna have flying cars. Like I'm making this up right now, so please take it with a pinch of salt. We're gonna have flying cars, and because of that, I don't know, I got it wrong example. But something that is so farther along the line, sometimes we are allowed to take a little bit more time to make sure that that emerging trend is not something that's a bit more of an outlier. So how far in advance, I would say that you need to be able to select your years of time that you need to execute that. So if it's about, as I said, a campaign, you need to be able to look into your next 6 months to 1 year. If it's more about taking strategic decisions, you need to have a look into more like 6, 10 years of time, because that is where you need to start thinking about what is going to be the future, where can we move as a next step. I
Uh,
hope
I
it
can I
question.
can add on that one thing, the fact that of course when the forecast become a long-term forecast, so becomes a foresight actually. Of course, data themselves are not enough, and there is also an important part of the qualitative assumption that you can do on the phenomena to understand if they will still be valuable in such a long time span, because many things can occur in the middle. So this is why for this type of long-term looking, we always recommend to look at wider phenomena, because of course and more stable phenomena that maybe in some cases are not really in some cases not even the most innovative or radical ones, but the ones that assure let's say a more stable foresight in the long term. And okay, so there are still a few questions, but we are running out of time. We will answer privately to all our guests. And so thank you very much, Alex, for this webinar, and thanks to all the participants. We hope that really this session has been fruitful for everybody, and we invite everybody to get in touch with us. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.